They're ready for you.
You know what, I spaced and forgot. I thought I,
Oh. Huge street. Maybe another one.
I was standing inside.
I report, I printed agendas. Do you guys need an agenda or not? I did record, I did.
One
Is
stack.
that where they are?
There's some in there. That stack that you gave me earlier,
Oh,
that's what you gave me.
let me make sure that Jake's name is right on here.
Yes. Got the Jake.
I am so sorry about that. It's one of our members and I just.
I'll take one of those, because I don't have it right. It was thinking,
What did she?
that one.
Okay.
I saw it afterwards, and I'm not gonna print it.
Okay, so you do have the recording going?
Yes, I do.
All right, we'll call our meeting to order. This is the January 9th, 2024 meeting of Custer County Fire Protection District 8 Board of Commissioners. And we'll start off, I don't believe we have any public comments. No, all right, public, we're racing right along. Then we have a new commissioner with us here tonight, Jake Hunter. Welcome, Jake. Thank you. And are you?
Yeah, I'm supposed to do a swearing in, so I made a
Swearing in.
copy of what you need to say, and if you just wanna. Hold your
Hand up and say
that, then I will
Stand up.
sign you
Yeah,
off.
please, okay.
Make it official. Raise your right hand.
Yep, just read the paper.
That's all you gotta do.
I, Jake Hunter, do solemnly swear that I support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington, and that I faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of the office. Fire Protection District 8, South Bay, Fire Commissioner position number 2, according to the law and the best of my ability.
Welcome, sir.
And then if you want, you could just sign that copy.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Is he supposed to provide champagne now or something?
I don't know.
Yeah, you-
That's the state that does that, so you didn't make it at the ceremony.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, our our next real order of business here is our nominations for chair, vice chair, and labor rep for the commission, for the board.
Well, I nominate you, Doug, to continue as chair another year.
All right,
And I second that.
okay. Are there any other nominations? No? Okay,
Do we have to do all the nominations or one at a time?
well, let's just do one at a time, I guess. Okay.
So we gotta make a motion, so.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we second
She
it.
seconded, and so all in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you for your vote of confidence. All right, and so for our vice chair, this past year, Pam has been our vice chair and quietly.
You wanna keep doing it?
And,
I can, yeah.
okay, I would nominate Pam to be our vice chair again for
And I second that.
for 2024. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye, thank you. And Pam, you have been our labor rep, and
Yes.
if you are interested in that, we would be glad to nominate you, I believe.
I like to continue that.
Okay, all right, I think you brought a lot of value to that. You really do.
Okay.
So,
Mary, I second it.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, there we are.
Brand new board.
Okay,
We've been finding where we do 2 years sentences with the positions and it just, by the time the second year comes around, you know what to do.
yeah, right, that's our thought. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah. All right, last month we saw the basic draft of the 2023 annual report. Chief, you want to present that, and we will move to adopt it in formal fashion.
This is it. Yeah, this is the, as required in our policy, an annual report provided. This is the same format that we used in last year. And basically, a general summary of how we've achieved or didn't achieve our goals from previous year. Any factors that are affected the achievement or the non-achievement of that, and then a summary of the next year's goals and objectives. So they are there, they were presented to you last month. I haven't received any questions yet, so I'd ask for approval of this as for steps in doing our annual stuff.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the annual report for 2000. Well, it says 2023, but it's supposed to be 24.
It's a 24 report, it's in 24 for 23.
But you have your goals on here.
The annual, it's at the end of the year. annual.
Oh, okay, got it, okay.
Okay, it's been moved
Seconded.
and seconded. Any discussion at this point? Any questions?
Wires down, surprise.
Yeah, wires down. Imagine that. Okay,
The annual report, has your 2020.
Yeah, the, and yeah, the annual report, according to policy, will include the goals and objectives of the previous year, any factors that affected it, and then we show the next year's or current year now goals and objectives.
all right. Any other questions or anything else that we bring up on that? All right, then, all in favor of approving this report as submitted, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Passes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the chief's report.
Okay. I did send it out. Apologize, it was a little late this month. We had a delay in getting our income statements from the county, but nonetheless, we'll send it out. I'm hoping you all had a chance to look through it. Be glad to answer any questions.
How much of a hit did you take on that AV? Was it what you projected?
Pardon?
The assessed value, how much of a hit did you take?
Percentage wise?
Well, long story short, in our 5-year planning window, we estimated about 8.5 to 9% increase in our AV, projected our revenues on that. It ended up being just short of 3%. So fortunately, it got a plus side, not a negative side, like District 3 is, but it caused us to really look at our current planning and make some real changes. Like we had, for example, had planned to hire additional career staff. With the loss of that revenue, planned revenue, we've just basically postponed. So.
Okay.
And then it shows that Matt Morris, the new fire chief, met with you and made.
Yeah, he came over. He's a new guy from King County, and he originally hailed from Nevada. And he had retired one time, then got a job in King County, and then retired. Now he applied for and got a job in Olympia. So seemed like a nice chap. He's very knowledgeable and everything. So he was very active with an RFA up in King County, and they were mergers and acquisitions for a while. So he was involved with a lot of that. So Olympia really needs some leadership right now. He can provide that.
So RFA means.
Regional Fire Authority.
Okay.
It's sort of kind of a hybrid fire district. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, it was a good visit.
Just wanted to get to know all his outlying departments kind of thing?
Yeah, they had a pinning ceremony for him and I wasn't able to attend. I talked to him a little bit on the phone and he asked, you know, would like to get there. Yeah, like, come on, see your stations. Yeah.
Any other questions for Chief on his report? Okay,
I do have one thing before we go into the volunteer staff report is, as part of my overall year-end reporting stuff and everything, I've tallied up the current volunteer census, if you will. And this is something we've been keeping track of for several years. And when we merged with District 7, we actually backdated some of their information as best as we could get. But as you can kind of see year over year, it's obvious that the census of the volunteers is tending to drop. And it's on a downward plane. For example, in 21, we had 42 FTEs. And that's not 42 people necessarily, it's 42 bodies that have filled a position, if you will. So we had 42, and in 22, we had 32 volunteers, and you can see the average FTEs we had for 23 dropped significantly. So basically, since the pandemic, it's really plummeted significantly. So you can see that the attrition rate went up significantly as well, because we had a lot of throughput. You can see we had 12 new hires, but we had 10 terminations, so it pretty much washed any increase that we had. But we're looking at a 30, bigger than a third of our volunteer force turning at a time. So it's a problem.
So that's obviously affecting staffing, and you've got the 3 platoons. So are you having to fill in with a lot of overtime to cover the non-volunteers being there?
Not really. Most of our volunteers, well, the whole picture of the staffing, incident readiness and response staffing is changed significantly. And after this past couple of years where we've reformatted our organization and going into having 3 platoons with a battalion chief in charge of each of the 3 platoons and putting the career staff on a 24-hour shift, really leveled some of that out. So our core that used to be volunteer and staffing our stations is really evolved into career staff is our core, and the volunteers are providing our supplemental. So next month, when you look at the average response times and staffing for incidents, I'll explain that a little bit more, but the volunteers are basically providing a plus up on our company level staffing.
So are we able to staff both stations 24/7 then?
Well, no, we have, this month we did it 90% of the time. Our average is about 83% over the course of the year. And that's just having the station. Now to staff a full engine company at 83, we're only doing that about 57% of the time.
So why not offer more overtime to make sure it's staffed?
Because it's expensive.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, you need to.
Well, we have to make choices and we gotta live in our budget. And frankly, that's the whole purpose behind the 5-year plan that we're trying to push ahead. Right now, we had our overtime budget was like 75% over. I mean, we did spend a lot in overtime. But a lot of it was as a result of missing career people for one reason or another. It caused some of that. And we do make choices when we need to buttress staffing, primarily at Station 83. But it's also an economic question. You expect me to come in at or below budget, so
Yeah.
I'm not writing any personal checks, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, This, just for information, and this just reinforces the notion that it's continuing to be very difficult, not so much frankly to recruit, but to retain. And retention really is the issue. Volunteers.
But I don't think it's a South Bay problem. I think it's a national problem for volunteers. Have you forecasted that? That's a significant drop in 13 years. Have you thought about what that looks like the next year or 2, 3, as far as numbers of volunteers?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we are programming over the next 5 years, a target of 25 FTEs of volunteers for our INR and our staff. So I think with some of the changes that we're making, the expectations that we have, our recruiting process, hopefully our retention, I think we might be able to plateau around 25. I think that's a desirable number to get balance on the shifts so that we can staff 2 stations, have adequately staffed engine companies and so forth. Bear in mind that the volunteer contributions primarily on nights and weekends too, not during the day. Although we have some volunteers who will shift during the day too.
Chief LeMay had a meeting of various staff, many of us volunteers, and we talked about some various things. Do you want to share any?
Yeah, I was going to include it with our
takeaway on that.
With our update on our volunteer staffing. So one thing I'm really trying to study on more is really what is the need we have operation. You know, we have Chief explained a lot of it, the change and have more career staffing, helping us stabilize a lot of that out. And we ended up landing on 10 volunteers per platoon to shoot for a target goal, but it was kind of arbitrary. So kind of having a hard time figuring out how do you actually tally a lot of the things? What is the actual need? What do we need for response? What does that mean for how many volunteers per platoon? What are the qualifications we need for each volunteer? If we're not qualified enough, it doesn't add as much value. And it just keeps circling us back down to our retention factor. As Chief mentioned, we do fine on recruitment. We get bodies, we get head counts in, but many of them aren't even staying 2 years. So if you're not with us 2 years, it's hard to get a firefighter, EMT, driver, operator. So looking more and more at, well, what does that mean? What does that mean for our volunteer program? What is our actual need and what's our capability? And what can we do to make it more robust or fit our need better? Do we need to make any changes? So there's multiple layers of all this. And I'm having, to be honest with you, a heck of a time trying to figure out what does that really mean we really truly need. So one of the pieces, as Commissioner Patrick mentioned, was getting kind of a bit of a work group going. So we've got a handful of our long-term volunteers, former volunteer battalion chiefs to attend and get the input in on. And of course, Janet and I help facilitate it. But ideally, what do we want? We want volunteers to stay with us for a long time. They're firefighter, EMT, driver, operators. That's fantastic, but that's not what we're getting. Do we do things differently to recruit differently? Do we do things different to retain differently? Do we have too many volunteers? We need fewer that are more qualified. Do we change the expectations of what it means to be a volunteer? Our department has evolved and changed a lot just in the last few years, and it's changed faster than the rate we've adapted our volunteer program. So I think we have a little bit of a difference on what do we need versus what do we do. Have we made any real significant changes to our volunteer program? Not really. A couple minor details, but we've been bringing them in the same way we have for, well, over a decade now. But what does it really mean? Well, taking the basic concept that we understand we all serve our community, and based on the very fact that we need to respond, volunteer, career, whatever the person, whatever it is that we do to make a model to give the best response capability, that's what we need. What is it? That's what we don't know.
So are they leaving because they just are frustrated or their lifestyle changes, or are they actually becoming a career?
Yes, all the above. Yeah, we have had, there's a lot of departments are hiring right now. It's kind of a record time right now in the state and nation for hiring career positions. It was never like this in my career, well, early in my career, but we're kind of going through this cycle where there's a lot of retirements at the same time. Departments are growing, populations are growing. As populations and areas grow, departments need more. COVID messed up a lot of it because people either did or didn't retire earlier. They never got the positions. We filled back again. So for all these reasons, fire departments are hiring and hiring and hiring. We've lost almost half of our volunteers in the last 2 years are because of a career position. They got hired to go career. good for them, but not as good for us when it comes to maintaining people. And then, of course, there's every other reason between my wife and I are having a baby I got promoted at work and now I just don't have time to volunteer. Or this didn't turn into the career thing, or it's not what I thought it was gonna be, and I don't wanna do this for my life. For any given reason, people leave. Rarely do we get, hey, we treated them bad, we're a bunch of jerks.
Yeah.
We're doing something poor to our volunteers, so.
So do we need to continue the program or is it beneficial for the department to keep training these people and then they don't stay with us?
That's the work we're doing. I don't have the final answer for you yet. We're still working on it and looking at it. I gotta get this input. What value is it? I don't see us being all career. I see us needing a level of volunteer, but what is that?
Yeah,
I'm trying not to be biased. I already have my mind made up on this study, but I think it's fair to study everything and look at it closely. My feeling is, yeah, we still need volunteers. Is it the same program we have now? Maybe not.
how much of the budget is allotted for because I don't have it in front of me. for the-
I'd have to look it up as well.
It's about 12%.
12% total budget is to volunteers. So yeah, even if just looking at the numbers, it's not necessarily a 12% means this many volunteers is that direct rate. You could have costs indirect, direct.
Yeah.
The ones, and then it's not a real simple answer either, because if you say, well, what is the value of that volunteer program? Well, we have members that have been with us for 6, 8, 10 years. And by all means, every stipend we pay them is very valuable for us.
Yeah,
And then
I'm not
when we
talking
brought
about
a new person in, they go to academy, they wash out, they don't finish academy, they don't give us back, they don't finish their probation. We take a loss.
Yeah.
Because it costs, I estimated out, it's about $3,800 indirect, just counting, or I'm sorry, direct cost. The academy costs this much, put on bunker years this much, gets boots cost this much, you outfit them,
exactly.
about $3,800 per volunteer. And again, this doesn't count the time we spend with them, the time we work with them, all those other indirects.
Yeah.
Just the, medical screening, processing, all that, about $3,800 per recruit. So if we pay for them to go to academy, they wash out, they don't come back and pull enough shifts, we take a loss.
Yeah.
And so if we're taking we're averaging 2 years per volunteer, and they only give us, say, 6 months, or they don't even pull any shifts, that's a loss. So overall, part of the study we can, so we got getting input from folks, and we also got in our data, studying our data. We could find out this many people, we already have it. I use Heidi's roster because she has the list of how long people are with us and how long they stayed with us. So we could look at it and say, well, a good majority of them may not have returned on investment, but that's all kind of how you tally it. It's sort of that you can figure things out any which way, which formula do you plug in to try to figure this. You can make the data look either way. So I'm trying not to make it look like, hey, we're just trying to show the program doesn't, but I also don't want to go out and try to show the program does when the value isn't there. Figuring out what does return on investment mean? It's about as diverse a description as you want to find
Like I
that.
said, I'm not saying eliminate, but I'm saying keep the ones that we have, but is it worth putting all these others through the education and then they're gone? To me, that's a loss to the business, to the department all the way around.
Well, I think the cost, it's a relatively low investment. We're putting an average of maybe 1.5 FTEs on an engine company that's volunteer. It's still worth it.
Yeah, but you could hire a full-time and still pay at least half of what they're getting.
What you're running up against right now too is the big 3 departments that's in this Thurston County, they are no longer required prerequisites. So you don't have to be an EMT, you don't have to be a firefighter 1 anymore, and you can just go from Starbucks straight to the fire service. That takes volunteers away from us. I think with your study group, I think we need to get creative on alternative options, kind of what Gloria's kind of alluding to is if we can take a fraction of that money and have some sustainability in the future and build out an FTE position with a portion of that money that we're using for our volunteer program, can that be an option?
Yeah, I think everything's worth looking at.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's the case though.
Well, and I think
Maybe.
the other question that is out there is, is our program geared to get people who are going to go all the way through and spend time with us? How are we starting out what is it we're doing? What is the screening that we're using? What are the kinds of people that we're bringing in? We don't, I mean, we, in the past, have just gone out with the net and scooped up a whole bunch of folks. And to say that, well, gee, some of them, failed out is not really surprising. So I think we had, as part of the discussion, some of the things that we talked about were some of the things that we do in terms of what expectations are we setting? What kind of interviewing are we doing? What kinds of questions are we asking? What kind of dialogue are we having to start that out? And is that the right thing that is going to lead to longer term success? Don't know the answer.
One of the big takeaways from that discussion too, to add on to that is, for me, a big takeaway is what we've done is we've streamlined our volunteer program to marry up with the same concepts of getting hired on for the career process. You do your CPAT, physical test, you take the written test, you take all. So everything we've been doing, we've been just, I should say, helping them do the same thing to get the career spot. So is that necessarily in our best interest to make all volunteers go through everything and do the CPAT, get everything and have the same standard and have that same expectation? For people who are trying to go career, we're losing about half our volunteers who want to go career. Maybe we necessarily don't want people who are, or shouldn't say as many, maybe we want more folks that say, look, I live up the road and I really do want to be here for 20 years, but I don't have the same kind of commitment that you're expecting of all these standards we have. Maybe it's too much, maybe it's too hard for a volunteer. And maybe that is exactly perfect for the kind of volunteer that wants to get hired. And we accept the fact that we only get a year and a half out of them. Maybe we focus more in on, hey, maybe we change a little bit of the expectations and have volunteers. I don't know. These are just all part of the discussion, but good points to it. Nonetheless, I got to come back to my boss and give him a recommendation of what we should do for the program.
Just to put it in perspective, financially, our entire fire volunteer program for 24 is $189,000. The average cost of a firefighter is $124,000. For a lieutenant, it's $160,000, and for a battalion chief, it's $180,000 per FTE. So, I mean,
It's almost
You get
all of our
one.
So
volunteers are-
with 27 volunteers for 188 seemed like a pretty good bargain to me,
Yeah, but we're
financially.
talking sustainability though, too.
Yeah.
That's all-
Yeah, but even if we canceled and didn't spend a cent on the volunteer, all we could possibly buy is one FTE.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're leveraging it to 27. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you, because I didn't know the breakdown, nobody's ever said, it's how much this is, and this, so we need to know that. For us that,
Yep. So that's why we do our monthly reports and everything.
So that's just a snapshot of kind of where we are. We have our 32 volunteers, as I mentioned last month at the report. And I just got notice that we probably will lose 2 more of them here in the next month. So more to follow then, but that puts us down to our 10-10-10. You know, you remember our pattern. We try to, our goal is 30 volunteers, 10 on each platoon. We creep up a little bit over during recruitment period. We average down to 30, we get a little below 30, and then we go through this little sine wave of volunteers. So is it sustainable in the sense that can we keep that number? It seems like it, but the turnaround is happening faster and faster. So return on investment versus sustainability are kind of how you start defining things.
Any other questions?
no, thanks.
All right, thanks for the information, gentlemen. And we're down to our draft policy and procedure. And Chief and I had a little bit of a conversation on this. So this is on the agenda as a review of the draft policy with regard to public records requests. And if you look at the document, it says at the very top that it is procedure number 1-20. We kind of have had this discussion in the past about the difference between policies and procedures, right? Policies are things that the board looks at, the board approves, the board puts in place. Procedures are things that implement policies, right? Yeah, and so I think in this case, what we have is a state statute that talks about public entities like the fire district are required to respond to public records requests. And we have different methodologies for doing that. Heidi has spent time with attorneys, with SNR, got things updated here, and there's a lot of information. And I would suggest that the document that we have, sort of the top of it talks about the policy. The policy is the district is committed to providing full public access to public records, those kinds of things. And then we get down here to where it starts like with definitions and then a whole bunch of things about exemptions from public inspection, duties of the records retention officer. Those are procedures, right? And so I've asked Chief if he would take a look at sort of separating this out and then bringing to the board for approval of policy.
As one document with the policy and then the procedures behind it.
And the procedures could be behind it, but basically trying to separate and make that distinction. And the beauty of that also is that if procedures change because the WAC changes or the RCW changes, we can make administratively, we can make a change to procedure. Doesn't have to come back before the board. The policy is we embrace and we, encompass the requirements, and we'll do our best to make sure that we have procedures in place to meet the requirements of the Public Records Act.
So what part are you saying, once it starts with definition, that is no longer the policy, that's now the procedure?
Essentially, yes, that's kind of where procedures start to take place. We define some of the terminology, and then you talk about a form that needs to be filled out, records that are done. There are certain exemptions for things that are personal information like health documents and certain kinds of things like that. So those are all procedural, and we, identify in here that we do have a public records officer, and that's Heidi, and how it all flows from there.
So. I'm just trying to think if there's any contradictions. Sorry. Person coming in and looking at your documents to have them both together. I mean, it's certainly easier to file them. Now, well, the policy and procedure can be separate, but they can be filed. I mean, it can be filed, how you make files, yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great idea.
Can reference each other, right? But I do believe they're kind of a separation there. And it sort of follows what we've done before on some other issues. We talked about that, about how as a board, we approve policies, set the broad strokes of what we want to have happen. And then how that actually gets implemented through procedure is something that's administratively taken care of.
I guess that's when you guys think about it, you guys are the ones who use them more than we.
It's just that we actually built on the previous one, and the previous one was sort of like that before we started thinking about segregating policy and procedure, so it makes perfect sense, so.
Yeah.
Because in this way, when you need to make a change, you don't have to come to us to make the change.
Right.
Okay, unless it's in the WAC. So are you able to do that and we approve it next time?
Yeah, I'll redo the draft and send it out.
Okay,
There's no urgency.
Yeah,
okay.
this is part of our routinely going through our policy manual and updating it. This one hasn't been updated since 2002, so up time, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Speaking of that, your updates, would you put the date we did them last, is it on the document at all, or is it in a different one?
What's that?
The date that you revised it last.
It's up in the masthead.
But for this particular masthead doesn't say what the
It
last.
doesn't say on here, like.
Oh,
the
yeah,
date's
no.
20 or
No,
February twenty
it,
twenty.
just the current. Yeah, no, it doesn't list it.
Possible we had to put in town.
I'd have to look at,
Then when it was revised.
Yeah, because I think the document you sent me was 2011,
The original.
the original one with
Yeah.
SNR's
What is-
whatever.
changes.
Yeah.
So that was probably the last time.
And am I wrong in thinking that in our policies and procedures in the, table of contents, it shows the
Yeah.
dates there?
I didn't see the.
So do you see any problems that we're presenting you with our thought here on how to
I don't.
change things up?
Mhm.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Doesn't matter if it's a policy or procedure, if it's a rule or process we follow.
Right. as a guy that worked for the state for a long time and did a lot of those things, there's distinction and,
That's good.
and we've talked about it here too, so let's, I want to have us continue to follow the pathway that we've already said.
I'm sorry, it was 17th of November 2021. This last.
Okay, with that, is any other questions or any other discussion with regard to that? Okay, so it's just review anyway. All right, we're down to secretary's report.
I sent out the minutes from December 12th. I had no changes. Ironically, the meeting that I was not at, but it was a very short meeting, so I actually watched the whole recording of
Yeah,
it.
Didn't have time to get him a glass of water. did you?
No.
Yeah. Okay, I'm looking for a motion then to approve the December minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the December 12th, 2023 minutes as they're written.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Okay,
Were there any questions on the warrants?
I had a question. So on transaction number 13, where it says Washington Fire Commissioners Association member fees, that's an annual thing?
Yes,
Okay, okay,
yeah.
I was thinking, man, now you guys pay that much money for us?
and it goes up every year.
Okay,
Yeah, and I think is it based on our assessed valuation? Some of them are, that's what they're based on.
No, the state chiefs one is.
Yeah, yeah, one of them is, and then the other one's how many members we have, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
it just said fees, but it didn't say annual, so I was just curious how often it was paid.
okay, I didn't have any questions of any of that either. Okay,
So I make a motion that we approve the warrants as they are.
okay, moved and, I'm sorry, Pam, you seconded?
I second it.
Okay.
You know.
All right, all in favor? Aye, thanks. Okay. Down to.
So for announcements, I sent out notice that we are going to be holding a special meeting here in this room on January 26th with our two attorneys, and it's very timely because normally I would recommend that you go to some kind of training on how to be a commissioner, but that's going to cover a lot of that. And I'll talk to you after the meeting about a few other things related to that. And then we have our awards banquet. So we do an awards banquet every year. You're right. I keep looking at the wrong calendar. It's February 3rd.
Third, that's what I thought.
So sorry. I had my 2023 calendar hanging up when I wrote this. This year we're holding it at the River's Edge, which is the restaurant over by the Tumwater Valley Golf Course. And yeah, we've had it there before and it's a nice venue. It's kind of small, which is why we discontinued using it, but we have a lot fewer people this year, so it should be just fine.
Okay.
So reminder on that, and I'll be sending out more email reminders as well, and we hope it can come to that. And then Legislative Day is February 17th, and thus far, Commissioner Bivens is the only person interested in that. If anybody decides they want to go, let me know.
I may go to that.
Okay, and also I was looking for Commissioner Hunter to see if there was anything coming up with the Fire Commissioners Association. And I don't know if they've sent this out yet, maybe they have. They are doing their spring seminars and they have one on March 2nd and March 23rd. If anybody's interested in that.
Where are they having it this time?
The 23rd is the Tulalip and the second is Spokane. But I want to say the second is for new commissioners and then the other one is for any commissioner. So,
Could you email me information on that?
Yes, I will.
That's it.
and that's all the announcements I have.
The notice will come out through the WFCA, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's.
You haven't seen it? Okay. Maybe they haven't sent it out yet. I went onto their website and looked at the calendar, so. it's possible they don't have a lot of information yet, which is why they're waiting.
Any comments? Open mic, open.
Mike,
Commissioner, comments?
To the team.
Thank you, excited to be here.
Okay.
Okay. Review and follow-up then.
well, we'll be looking at a revised revision of policy 2-30. 1-20, sorry. Next month, also, we'll be providing a kind of a 2023 wrap up with the response data. I think at this point.
Okay. Good. With that, we will take a recess then to executive session. We're gonna be talking about performance assessment. And we will come back, I'm expecting in 20 minutes. And we will not be making any decisions or motions or any of that during that time period. So with that, I will close this portion of the meeting and then we'll recess for executive session. Welcome.